Okay, I'll read the script for remote conduction of open meetings. This open meeting of the Select Board is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. Unless participation is required by law, this meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening by video conference via Zoom webinar as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. We will now confirm member access. I'll go to board members first. Please confirm that you are here and can hear me. Melissa Murphy.
Here.
Matt Fee.
Hi, I'm here.
Don Holgate.
Present.
Thank you. And then we'll go to staff. We'll go, as I see you, Ken Bogrant.
Present.
Vicky Marsh.
Present.
Robert Petroff.
Present, thank you.
Erica Mooney.
Present.
John Giorgio.
Present.
Libby Gibson.
Here.
Brian Turbot.
In attendance.
And I think I got everybody. Jennifer Ferrer, Registry of Deeds. Can you hear me, Jen?
I'm here.
Hi, thank you. Okay, anticipated speakers. We have Nat Lowell from the Planning Board. And then Arthur Reed.
Here.
Thank you, Arthur. And Dave Iverson might be joining us as well from the Planning Board. Okay, public participation guidelines. We're using Zoom webinar for meetings, which allows for the public to participate. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed of the meeting. Please click the raise hand button if you wish to speak with your particular agenda item. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order that they are raised. Please remember to mute your phones. I usually ask everybody, if you're not speaking, to turn your video off. It just cleans up the screen and makes it a little easier to see when hands go up. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. We're going to start with county tonight. Dawn, can you call to order since you're still the chair, and then we'll do the next agenda item. Thank you.
So I'll call the County Commissioners meeting to order on January 26th at 5:32. And then I will open nominations for a temporary chair and vice chair.
Nominate Melissa for chair and Matt as vice chair.
Okay. I'll second that. And then we can vote by roll call. Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Hi.
Don Holgate, aye. I'll turn it over to you, Melissa.
Thanks very much, Dawn. Okay. Under announcements, the County Commission meeting is being audio and video recorded. Is there any public comment on items that are not on the agenda this evening? I will move on. Certainly, if there's no new business that I'm aware of. So approval of minutes and warrants. Any questions, or could I have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Second.
Okay.
All those in favor by roll call. Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Don Holgate.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Hi.
Melissa Murphy. Aye. Those are approved unanimously. Request for approval and authorization for town council to execute assent to amend complaint to recognize 1975 order of taking of Jefferson Avenue and approve registration of subdivision plan of lot 5 and lot 6, showing lot 7 and 8 on land court plan number 16877-E for 41 Jefferson Avenue. Who's going to be walking us through this?
I'll be walking you through this. This is
Thanks,
something
Ken.
that neither the county commissioners or the select board has seen before. This is something that has been newly instituted by a new person up at the land court who feels that it is important for her in order to be able to change the procedure that's existed in the past. So what this is asking us to do is to, in fact, have the county recognize the taking that the county did in 1975 of the road that ends up being Jefferson Avenue. And then because of the fact that a subdivision plan, which has been approved by someone else, and abuts our property, the town's property in 41 Jefferson Avenue, that plan that we agreed to the registration of that subdivision plan. We don't have anything to do with the approval of the plan, simply agreeing that it can be registered with the land court. I've asked town council to review this, and Vicky has provided an opinion that the documentation does not adversely affect the county's ownership of the fee in Jefferson Avenue. It does not change the lines of the taking of the Jefferson Avenue done in 1975, and it does not affect its use as a public way. And so therefore, town council approves the form of the assent and recommends its execution. Be happy to answer any questions. This is really doing a tremendous amount of paperwork to record something that is in fact already on record. But the new person up there wants to have the town to assent to all of those things. And you're going to hear that twice more at county, and then twice more at the select board meeting later tonight.
Great, thank you. Matt?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy, aye. That one approves unanimously. Ken, I
And
imagine you're going to lead us through the next
Well,
two?
the next one, I will save you from listening through all of it. It's for 7 Sherburne Turnpike. And again, it's the exact same thing. We did a taking in 1975. They just want us to approve of the taking and also to agree that to the registration of the subdivision plan. So,
Okay, any
again, we have the
questions?
same opinions from Vicky as that I read before.
Great.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. By roll call, Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
and Melissa Murphy, aye. That also is approved unanimously.
And the last one is for 19 Sherburne Turnpike. And again, it is the exact same thing with respect to the taking in 1975 and the recognition, approval of the registration of the subdivision plan. And we have the same opinion from town council as to no adverse effect to the town.
Okay, great. Any questions or motion from the board?
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. By roll call, Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
and Melissa Murphy, aye. So
And
unanimous.
Melissa, I would just like to thank Vicky. These documents are really very simple and straightforward. The amount of work that needed to be done in terms of going through all the documentation and the registration was extraordinary. And it's something that the town has an obligation to do. And it was very frustrating because it was doing stuff that is already on record. But the land court says you've got to do it. We don't have an option not to do it. So I want to thank Vicky for all of her hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicky, and thank you, Ken. Okay, now into the next agenda item, the FY23 county budget. And I think we'll turn this over to Brian Turbot, the finance director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next slide, please, Erica. Thank you. So we're here to present the county budget to the county commissioners tonight, which is made up of the county administration and the registry of deeds, which is made up of the administration of the registry as well as deeds excise. Next page, please, Erica. Thank you. Thank you. So the revenue sources for the county budget, just to remind everybody, is the town assessment, deeds excise revenue, any recording fees, the corrections deeds excise, which is applied to the public safety facilities debt service. And should we need any of them, either the registry of deeds excise fund balance, which can be used in limited circumstances, specifically for items pertinent to the registry of deeds itself, or any county fund balance that may be available. Next slide, please, Erica. So we've projected revenue from the county of $174,707 from the town assessment, deeds excise receipts, in discussing the projection for next year with the registrar, 637,500 made up of 382,000 from county admin and registry of deeds of 255,000, recording fees of 180,000, and then 250,000 from corrections deed excise, which gives us a projected revenue of $1,242,207. Next slide, please. So for the county funding requirement also, which was formerly known as the maintenance of Everett, by law, the county must provide a certain amount of non-deeds excise revenue to the registry. It is increased every year. The calculation starting point is increased every year by 2.5%. This year, the county funding requirement to the registry was $354,706, which, if you subtract the $180,000 estimate from deeds excise, generates the $174,700. We rounded up $707 in the county assessment. Next slide, please. For projected expenses, the county administration, there are no employees that are funded directly through the county itself. Main expenses there are legal and professional services. We have maintained a level funding of $258,984, which is consistent with prior years. Registry of Deeds does have 3 full-time employees, administrative expenses, and any potential deeds excise or special projects. We're projecting $523,679 for those expenses, and then the $250,000 that is from the corrections excise, which is applied to the debt service for the public safety facility. All told, we are projecting $1,032,663 in expenses for county administration. Next slide, please, Erica. Thank you. Comparison with the FY22 budget, as you see on the left-hand side of the page, the fiscal 22 budget that was approved for the county was $1,020,218. This year, as noted on the last slide, we're proposing $1,032,663, which, with the increase attributable mostly to payroll in terms of insurance, retirement expenses, and then normal salary increases on an ongoing basis. Next slide, please. So the next steps after we present the budget to you as county commissioners tonight is on February 2nd. We will go to the Nantucket County Review Committee, which is the finance committee, review this budget with them and ask for them to adopt this budget at the meeting on the 2nd of February. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thanks so much, Brian. Are there any questions from board members? Okay, and I'm sorry, Brian or Libby, did you need a motion from us to approve this tonight? Okay.
Yes, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy. Aye, that's approved unanimously. Thanks so much.
Thank you
Can I
very
have
much.
a motion to adjourn the county?
So
meeting?
moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call: Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy. Aye. Thanks so much. Back to you, Jason.
Thank you, Melissa. We'll call to order the select board meeting January 26, 2022. It is 5:44. No changes to the agenda. Might be an extra announcement, but over to you, Libby.
Thank you. So just the 2 regular announcements are on there, specifically that this meeting is being video and audio recorded, and well, actually that was it. And then you all's announcements or comments. And then we do have a kind of an update announcement from the Island Home.
Do that first.
Sure. So our administrator, Bob Petroff, is here, as you know, and we talked earlier today and have been kind of off and on in contact all week about the COVID outbreak at our island home, and it's been on social media, and I know you all know about it. So I asked Bob to come on and sort of, reassure the community and let you all know specifically what is being done there to contain the outbreak and deal with it, because it's actually, contain is probably not a good word at this time, but what is being done to address it, there's quite a bit. Bob?
Sure. Thank you, Libby, and thank you, the board, for the opportunity. Obviously it's a critical issue, and a lot gets said, a lot going on. I'm happy to provide some background and hopefully some added clarity to what's going on and what's real. I've put a brief summary together in the topics of current COVID status, what the general COVID protocols are, what the visitation process is, and how we're involving other health system providers to help us through the process. So in terms of the current COVID update, we had as you know, we had our first case on January 8th. As of this morning, we had 21 positive residents out of 30. During the day, we did some surveillance testing, and now we're up to 23 residents out of 30. And we've had 2 recovered. The last day that we do what we call surveillance testing, which I can explain a little later if you'd like. And that was done today. That's where we got the extra 2 from. In terms of staff, we've got 8 positive staff out of 56, and 2 folks have recovered. And that was last done yesterday. And there were no additional staff members yesterday. And that leaves 7 residents negative still within the facility. And out of those who are positive, we have 3 residents in the hospital, and 2 residents are asymptomatic. In terms of COVID protocols, all that we do is determined and defined by the Department of Public Health. So we follow their parameters and bulletins and guidelines in order to take care of COVID folks. We also, since we're in an outbreak, have regular contact and availability of a state epidemiologist to help us as things come up and work through those. In terms of if there is a positive, the isolation process is the same for staff or residents, and that is we isolate for 5 days, and all staff who interact with that person are fully gowned and wear full PPE, gowns, masks, eye masks, and gloves. And we do that for 5 days. And if after 5 days there's a negative antigen test, and there's also no presence of fever and no increase in symptoms, then you can come off of isolation. If those conditions are not present, then isolation remains until those conditions are present. Initially with isolation, we took we were more strident in our efforts to contain the COVID, and we isolated within a specific unit. As the numbers have gone up, and in consultation with the epidemiologists and the rapid response team, which I'll explain later, who is here, we now are isolating in the rooms with the residents in their rooms, but that's also subject to what the clinical situation is with them and their roommates, whether they've been vaccinated and whether they are infected. If certain conditions exist within that, i.e. your roommate is vaccinated but is negative, then you cannot what we call cohort together. But if that is the case, then we can cohort together, and then we have signage outside the room, and we have carts outside the room to put all the proper PPE on, and also to dispose of all the PPE equipment when you leave the room. Let's see. During the outbreak, all staff and residents what we do is we do surveillance testing, And when we do surveillance testing, that's done with what we call Binex testing, which is the antigen test, and that's done every 3 days. And also it's done if anybody becomes symptomatic. If someone does trigger a positive, then we also do a PCR test and confirm that. And all that information is reported to the state and maintained in their logs. In terms of the visitation picture, we again follow DPH guidelines, and DPH guidelines require that visitations be accommodated at all times to the best of their ability. And so we obviously comply with that. It includes isolation visits, which Department of Public Health specifically does not recommend. However, it is obligated to recognize that you have to accommodate residents' wishes to see their family and families members to see their loved ones. So when that happens, we do accommodate visitations. We're fortunate we have an outdoor entrance or outside of the building entrance to a small conference room, so the family members or loved ones can come in that way and not go in through the rest of the building, and then we can bring the residents to them. Finally, in terms of involvement of other resources, there is something called a rapid response team, or an RRT, and that is a resource that's made available by the Department of Public Health, the state of Massachusetts, and that's to provide staffing resources as requested by affected facilities. So late last week, Wednesday, Thursday or so, we started fearing that we were going to ramp up. So we reached out to the rapid response team through the epidemiologist to request them to come out to give us some support, because obviously as a small island community, you know, 1 or 2 people can be 25% of our total. So anything that happens, we try to be in front of the wave as opposed to behind it. So we asked them and requested to the epidemiologist, and then those requests go to a clearing entity of some sort, where they review the various requests throughout the state and decide to assign someone. Interestingly, you know, on the calls this week, out of 350 some odd nursing homes throughout the state, all but 5 or 6 are in outbreak status similar to what we are in. So it's clearly a statewide situation that we're dealing with. The RRT group is, the first group was 2 RNs and 1 aide who came in to help us. And they do both on the floor work to help relieve our managers and staff members who are working diligently. And they also are there as an infection control consultant to help provide guidance to make sure we're doing all the things we can do to keep our residents safe. They're also this week, as of yesterday, or this morning, they actually came in. They started a little bit yesterday. They have brought in a monoclonal antibody therapy team, and those are nurses from the state which come out and provide that IV therapy to residents who meet the criteria for that therapy and who also consent to that therapy. So they are here today, and to my knowledge, I believe they are or have been doing five folks so far.
Can I ask you that therapy, is that something that happens over, is it just one day? Is it over multiple days? How long does that last?
I'm not a clinician. I believe it's just today. I don't think there's multiple, I think it's just more of a administration and then a close monitoring is why they need to be here ongoing. But I'm not the definitive word on that one, Jason.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And let's see, monoclonal. I want to make sure I don't miss anything and try to anticipate your questions. Likewise, you know, we've been close coordination with the hospital in terms of coordinating with them in terms of patient flow back and forth when that has to happen, and also, you know, any operational needs that may come up. Predominantly, there's been some support with PPE, personal protective equipment, and they've been great. That's the bulk of my summary. I also would want to take the opportunity to publicly recognize the work of all the staff and the support of the community. It's been, obviously very important and very heartwarming. And I want to thank the community and you folks for helping that to happen. So I think I've hit my high points, and happy to take any questions or whatever the committee's pleasure is.
Any questions from the board or comments? Melissa?
Thank you, Jason. I just want to echo Robert's thanks to the staff and community members, friends of our island home, and to Robert, thank you. We're lucky to have you, boots on the ground, and this is initiation by fire. So thank you for your great care and stewardship, and heartfelt thanks to all the staff. This is scary. They've done such a great job in these past 2 years protecting our patients, and my prayers and thoughts are certainly for speedy recovery for everybody.
Thank you. It's all a team up and down.
Thank you, Melissa. I echo your sentiments there. I did ask Libby today, when COVID first hit, we had no cases at all. And I asked, was that because it was a state of emergency and nobody was allowed in or out? And that's not the case now. Libby, you might know this.
Nobody's allowed in and out to the building, or?
I thought that was how it was when COVID first started and during the state of emergency, correct?
Yeah, way back, the DPH has evolved over time, and 2 years ago it was much different. And
outside of staff, no family members, nobody could come in. That's not.
Yeah, it was, well, we were dealing with the unknown, and it's unfortunate, fortunate, or whatever. It's a reality. We've had to evolve how we respond to the circumstances we're in, and there's no simple light switch for the multiple dynamics that are involved, mental health and safety and community, perspectives. So it can be a bee's hive.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert. Matt?
Yeah, and we're fortunate it happened now once we know everything we know. We were very fortunate this didn't happen early on. We all saw the things that happened. Fingers crossed that we get through this well, and we know a lot more, and there's treatment and there's vaccinations, and this, there'll be less sickness than there would have been early on. So, I feel fortunate that we, are facing it now.
A case in point with that, Matt, is, if I could, is out of all our residents, all have been vaccinated and boosted, except for one resident has not been boosted. And, God knows what we'd be looking at without that, in my humble opinion.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Robert. Thanks for all your efforts, your team. Was that it on? Okay. Any select board announcements or comments to start off with, Melissa?
Thanks, Jason. I attended last week a cannabis advisory committee meeting, and it's the second one where we've had subsequent, significant participation from members and some conversation. And there is some debate happening about whether or not to bring a warrant article forward either this year or next year. I think probably it's too late for this year, but to consider increasing the number of licenses, as I understand it, and I'm not really bringing this up for conversation tonight, but just as a 411, that if we wanted to expand services to include such things as delivery, or issue a third license for operation, or have this board consider licensing, I forget the kind of use it is at a restaurant or something like that, that we would have to have a warrant article, increase the licenses, and then it would be up to this board to sort of shape the policy around that. I just wanted to let you know those conversations are happening at the advisory committee level. And there's really some, mixed perspectives on the benefits of having delivery service, particularly for medical patients who can't access either of the dispensaries. Also important to know the regulations set up by the State Cannabis Control Commission around that, because I know when people think about delivery, it can send blood pressure spiking, thinking about opportunities for marijuana products to get into the wrong hands. In any case, I think that there's a good debate to be had, but that conversation is happening at that committee, and I wanted to let the select board know.
Thank you, Melissa. I had one comment, some good news. The BioBot test came in today and it was at 10 positives per day. So 2 weeks ago it was at 90, last week it was at 55, and now it's down to 10. Doesn't solve everything. We still need to get vaccinated and do a lot of efforts, but that's good news. That's heading in that direction. Any other comments? Okay. There's no follow-up comments from prior select board meetings. Is there any public comment tonight that's not on the agenda? Please raise your digital hand. Okay, we have one. Julie?
Hi. Did I miss, Erica said that the committee things would be under section VII, but
Yep,
I
it's
didn't
coming
hear
right up.
I didn't hear it come up. I thought I'm looking at the agenda and I
It's
saw
coming
it.
in. It's coming in two more agenda items.
Oh, so it's just not in the place I thought it would be. All right, thank you.
All right. Okay, we'll see you in a second. Any other public comment that's not on the agenda? All right, I don't see any more hands. There's no new business that I know of. Is there approval of the minutes of January 19th, the payroll warrants and treasury warrants? Is there a motion?
Sorry, so moved. Approval.
Second,
Okay, all those in favor by roll call, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
aye.
Jason Britt is aye. That passes unanimously 4-0. Now is Citizen Department request applicant introduction and review of applications and appointments to Council for Human Services. And so now let me pull this up on my screen. Give me 1 second. So we will have, thank you. You did it for me, Erica. We have 2 vacancies and 4 people who are applying: Kelly Steffen, Tara Restieri, Veronica Bolchik, and Julie Kever. Any of you can speak now. If you'd like to say anything, please raise your digital hand. We go to Tara or Tara. And then we'll be voting after we hear from everyone.
Hi there.
Hi.
And it's Tara or Tara. I don't care. I'm very
Thank you.
as long as you don't call me late to dinner. Anyhow, so just to give you guys a little bit of a brief background on who I am and why I think I'm suited for this position in many ways. I've spent, while I am not a full-time resident of the island, I do spend more than almost 3/4 of the year on island. I live at 74 Nantucket Road. I have spent the last almost 30 years of my life in science and in healthcare. I started my career in research in oncology at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. I then went on to become the head of operations for a biotech company that developed oncology drugs. Beyond that, I started a consulting firm that worked with both public and private biotech companies in terms of helping them understand and how to navigate drug development, research and development operations and use of proceeds for those companies. I then my company was actually then bought by an investment bank, and I became a banker for a very short period of time because I decided that I had the trifecta in 2008 when the markets went bad. I got divorced and my father passed away. So it kind of changed my life in a very, very meaningful way. I became a chemistry teacher and did that and coaching for many years. And now actually 100% of my time is actually given to civic service. I am on the town Board of Human Services in the town of Greenwich, Connecticut. I also reside on multiple other nonprofit organizations, but I think most importantly for me, why I feel that this is important to me is because Nantucket is so important to me and giving back is so important to me. And I've had experience doing this. I know how to work together with organizations, with our community partners. I, in fact, volunteer for NFFRA and donate. I've been successful in helping, folks deal with a lot of the issues that have come up, especially over the last 2 years, and helping human services pivot to the needs of people within the community. Even in Nantucket, I've spent basically, time, people out on Ask Nantucket, figuring out how I can help others, but also how we as a community can help each other. One thing I actually started and worked on in the town of Greenwich, which is also applicable, is we started a Facebook page called Pay It Forward. And that Pay It Forward program basically has folks within the community who have things that they need, have others within the community who help meet those needs. So, this year I actually collected more and used Amazon actually as well. You can set up pages, collected almost over 600 winter coats for people and distributed them. That was in Greenwich, but those are the kinds of things that I really feel that I can add and can really bring to, the island that I love so much and that I ultimately will end up being here full time. I know that. My husband knows it too. He's just waiting for the shoe to drop. And other than that, I'm a mom of 6, a blended family of 6 kids, 3 out of college, 2 in college, 1 left a senior in high school. So I'm about to be an empty nester. And by the way, I also forgot to tell, I'm a registered EMT and work in the state of Connecticut and have reciprocity in the state of Massachusetts. So that's a little bit about me. And if anybody has questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you for your time. And I hope you will see why I believe I belong on the council.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara. I don't see any hands up, so we'll go to Veronica. Nope, Veronica, people are jumping in and out. Oh, Julie.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, hi. I'm Julie Keever. I am a 12th generation Islander. I was born and raised here. I lived on Brant Point as a kid back when you could do that as a year-rounder families. There were several of us down there. I went to high school up in New Hampshire, however, where our family lived for a few years, returned to the island after graduating there and met a husband and raised 3 kids here for several years. And then I went back to UMass and got a bachelor's. And after that, I came back to the island and I've lived here ever since again. And over the time, I've seen many changes in the school systems, the community services, housing, demographics. And as I get older, now I have grandkids and I've worked in the customer service venues for years, restaurants, a bank, the Historical Association, 13 years, now at Preservation Trust. And I just have seen, I'm concerned about some of the availability of needed services and housing for different specific segments of the community. And I feel I offer a unique voice on behalf of others with some needs and limitations in maintaining adequate living standards here due to my own experiences and firsthand knowledge of other people's needs not being met completely or And I would just like to welcome the opportunity to work with and learn from the people already on the Human Services Council. That's about it.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, we go to the next one, Veronica.
Okay, my name is Veronica Bolchik, and I've been a full-time island resident since 2018, but a visitor here for the past 25 years. My professional life has been spent mostly in the area of human services, either directly or indirectly. I retired from a teaching position with children with special needs. But prior to that, I spent 25 years in product development and marketing of equipment for rehabilitation and special education. I have been involved in volunteer positions my entire life. It's something my parents instilled in my sister and I. And from PTA when my children were in school to working with the YMCA. And most recently, I was on our Board of Education when I was off island in a similar community to Nantucket, both socioeconomically and with a variety of different cultures. I would, most recently, I've been working with the food pantry on the island, and I'm also an active volunteer with the Board of Public Health with our vaccination clinics. I would hope that I would be able to make a difference working on the Council for Human Services in basically taking the experiences I've gained from working off island and bringing that here to improve the delivery of services to and the wellness of our community. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Veronica.
Okay.
I don't see any other hands up, so I believe now, Melissa.
Jason, I just want to disclose that I have a relationship with Veronica in my business, but I've talked with counsel and I can disclose that there's no financial benefit that would preclude me from voting for anyone tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I think we can go to a vote now. We will email Erica and then she will repeat them back and we will confirm.
One question, Jason and
Sure.
or Erica, I know there's two different terms. Are they two separate votes or are we just voting two people together? And how do we know which person's filling which seat?
That is up to the board. If you want to do two separate votes, one for the one seat and one for the other, you can break it up like that, or you can leave the terms up to staff to decide. It's really your
I'm
call.
comfortable with that. I just was curious.
I think staff can decide and then the candidates who are elected could work with staff and say, I'm fine with the one and do the other. Is everyone okay with that? Yes, okay. This is similar to the, was it last week, Affordable Housing Trust, where we wanted everybody? Can everybody be voted in?
Sorry,
Well,
I thought I was waiting for one more, but I've got them all in now. Melissa has voted for Julie Keever and Veronica Bolchik.
yes.
Matt has voted for Veronica Bolchik and Tara Risteri.
Yes.
Okay. Dawn, Veronica Bolcheck, and Tara Restieri.
Yes.
And Jason, Veronica Bolcheck, and Tara Restieri. So Veronica and Tara are the new members.
Thank you to everyone who applied, and yeah, I wish you luck, and I'm glad that we have a strong Council on Human Services. It's needed. Melissa, and then we'll go to
Yes.
Brooke.
I just wanted to note that I think we've seen such a great increase in participation in applications for boards and committees. And I also think the talent bank application has been really useful. So I'm just seeing great progress in this area, and I wanted to note that and add my thanks to all of the applicants tonight.
Thank you, Melissa. You go to Brooke Moore, has her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reiterate my appreciation to the folks who have applied for these seats. I currently sit as the chair of the Council for Human Services, and I want to invite those who were not appointed this round, please come to our meetings. We want to hear your voice. We want to have your feedback and your expertise that you so eloquently articulated about. So thanks to those who will be serving with us, and I look forward to talking to those who were not selected tonight, and really invite you to join our meetings at any time. Thanks.
Thank you, Brooke. Our next item is the Nantucket Conservation Foundation request for preliminary review. The conservation restricted to be held by Nantucket by NCF for land located at 35 Shakamo Road. Arthur, are you here representing them?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I represent the owner of the property. I also happen to represent the Conservation Foundation, but that's another story. But I'm here on behalf of David Rosenzweig, the owner of the property in question. I know this is preliminary review tonight. I just wanted to give you a little bit of the background. Obviously, the conservation restriction that we're presenting will have to be reviewed by town council. It's been approved by the state for local review. So the only remaining step is for it to be approved at the town level and then executed and set up for recording. My client, David Rosenzweig, has owned approximately 16 acres of land out in the Shakamo area since 1994. It had been subdivided into some 15 lots before he owned it. He's used it as a single property. He has had a house there and has lived there on a seasonal basis a great deal of the time over that period of over 27 years that he's owned the property. And the time has come for him to sell. He was approached by many developers who would like to do a project out there, and he felt very strongly that the property, which is surrounded by Conservation Foundation land, should not be intensively developed. What he's done has been to, first of all, gift a 3-acre parcel that's sort of separate from the rest of the property, separated from it by a paper street, to the foundation. He then went to the land court, redivided the property to get rid of all the individual lots, sold approximately 8 acres to the Conservation Foundation last fall, and is now selling the rest of the property with his house on it. And we're placing a conservation restriction on that property so that it can't be subdivided or intensively developed or anything done to it which would harm the conservation values of the property. Mr. Rosenzweig is obviously leaving a lot of money on the table by doing all of this, as against having sold it to a developer, but he feels very strongly about the conservation values of the property and its integrity, and has a buyer who is going to be, who is very happy to be buying the property subject to the conservation restriction. And I think this is just a win-win situation for the town and everybody involved in it. Obviously, I know that I'm sure Vicky will be taking a look at the document, and I look forward to hearing any questions or comments that she may have as she's been through it. And I just want to express our appreciation to the town for your work on this. And my client has indicated that he will reimburse the expenses that the town has in connection with this.
Thank you, Arthur. It's very
Let me know
generous.
if there's any other question.
Yeah, thank you, Arthur. Very generous of your client. Usually there's no questions, but I usually ask just out of habit, is there any public benefit, or I guess public access involved? Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't.
No, there's no public access specifically involved in this. This is the land immediately around a house.
Right.
As I say, the adjacent land has been gifted to conservation, and obviously the foundation will, as they normally do, allow appropriate types of public use that are not inconsistent with the conservation values involved with the property. Again, the parcel in question is surrounded on 3 sides by Conservation Foundation property, and the other side is Shakama Road.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? If there's none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Arthur.
Yeah, we're sending it for review.
Thank
It's
you
not
very much
approved now,
indeed.
but
Yep.
That's right. It has to be reviewed by town council, and then we'll come back to you in the normal procedure to be voted upon and then signed by the town.
Thank you. Okay, on to real estate items. Request for approval and authorization for town council to execute supplemental petition for approval of a subdivision plan for 35 Nantucket Avenue, delineated parcel T1. Is this Vicky and or Ken?
I will take that, Jason.
Thanks, Ken.
This follows up on what we discussed at the county meeting at the start of this. These petitions are the exact same thing. Again, in each instance, the land court is asking that we approve the plan representing the 2 streets there and in the order of taking by eminent domain in 2009, and then to also agree to the registration of the subdivision plan, which has been approved. And again, town council has reviewed both this and the next one and has found that there is no problem, no adverse effect as to the town's ownership of the fee in the land, and the issuance of the land court order will result in the issuance of a certificate of title in the name of the town for parcel T1, and town council approves of the form of the supplemental petition and recommends its execution. Be happy to answer any questions, and Vicky is here also if there are any questions that I don't have the answers to.
Questions or a motion? Matt?
yeah, I'll make a motion, but where is T1 on there? I looked around. Which one? Where is it on that map?
Vicky, help?
If you can bring up the, can you bring up the map? So parcel T1 is here. See this little strip here?
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like half of the width of the street is, of the paper street is really T1. Okay.
Okay. I was looking for it. Couldn't find it. All right.
I know.
I'll move approval.
They're very small a lot of times.
I'll
There's a second.
second.
Thank you, Melissa. All those in favor? Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. That passes. On to the next one.
The next one is just a little bit different, Jason. This is the town and ends up being a joint petitioner with Surfside Properties, which is the owner of 35 Nantucket. But again, to do the exact same thing, to have approved the plan representing the taking, approving the order of taking, and also approving the fact that the that we took the title, took the fee in parcel T1 in Mascatuck and request that the land court recognize that the portion of Mascatuck shown as parcel T1 be eliminated, and that the subdivision plan of the land court be approved, and that a new certificate of title in the name of the town also be issued. Again, this has all been reviewed by Vicky and recommends that there is a benefit to the town and no negative activity with respect to the town.
Matt,
Move approval?
I'll second.
all those in favor by roll call, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you.
Town managers report.
Thank you. So first off, we have an activity update from our DEI director, Kamal McCarthy. Kamal?
Thanks, Libby. Thanks, members of the board, for having me. Libby asked me to give a quick update just on not only things that the office has accomplished, but just looking at the year ahead. So there are 4 specific things that I'm just going to talk about really quickly and then open up for questions. I'm going to just talk about the DEI strategic plan, the Massachusetts DEI Coalition, what our activities are for Black History Month, as well as just give a quick update on cultural celebrations for 2022. Excuse me. So going back to the first one really quickly, the strategic plan development is kicking into high gear. Yesterday, we completed leadership readiness development with department heads and community leaders. We had some riveting discussions on how the town leadership can operationalize DEI. And a quick thanks to Jason and Melissa for representing the board and participating in that process. Some next steps for the strategic plan include 1, a presentation by the consultants to town employees on the consultation objective and the journey ahead. 2, we'll be sending out employee surveys. So if you see a DEI survey in your inbox, please fill it out. 3, we'll be starting the process for creating an internal DEI committee. So that will be made up primarily of town employees, all of town employees, not primarily, sorry. And 4, we'll be scheduling focus groups. So that will be happening soon. I invite all town employees to participate as much as possible. I have a freestyle note here, which I usually don't do, but only 50% of community leaders and department heads participated in our recent survey. And quite honestly, that is our first data point on DEI and where the town wants to go. I personally thought the numbers that we got back were fascinating. And there's a lot to unpack from that, but I really encourage town employees to truly participate in not only the surveys, but the focus groups, because then we'll have like real data point on where we want to go forward, not only as not an organization as town employees, but as a community as well. I'm going back to my notes now. I'm feeling uncomfortable. There will be opportunities for community-wide engagement in the DEI consultation process. The approach right now is to work internally with town employees and externally with the community. We will take what we learn from working internally and then develop DEI capacity building community-wide. Moving on to the second thing, Massachusetts DEI Coalition. I am participating in the coalition subcommittee on DEI practices and professionalization. Specifically, this subcommittee is creating a DEI guideline tailored towards municipalities that are interested in just starting the DEI process, which Nantucket is clearly ahead of because we have an office, a DEI director, and so forth. So we're using our skills, myself and other DEI professionals, to just develop like a basic guideline that other municipalities can follow. Thirdly, as for Black History Month, I'd like to invite everyone to participate in the Black History Month celebration that's coming up. This year celebration is being led by Chantal Moise-Murphy at the Chamber of Commerce. And it's a collaboration with many local entities, including the office, of course. And the general approach right now is to do a panel discussion on Black business owners that are here in Nantucket. So please look forward to more information on that. And I invite everyone to participate. And then the last thing to talk about is just things to look forward to. Just today, earlier today, we had a group a meeting with 7 different entities on the island: the Athenaeum, the Culture and Tourism Office, the Nantucket Preservation Trust, the Museum of African American History, the Chamber of Commerce, this office, of course, as well as the Unitarian Church. And we just sat down to really just discuss what are some of the activities that we'll be focusing on as a community. So for example, the Athenaeum will be taking the lead on Pride Month celebrations. The DEI office will be taking the lead on Juneteenth celebrations. And the Unitarian Church will be taking the lead on Hispanic Month celebrations as well. So I just want to give everyone something like what you should be looking forward to as far as just the many different activities that the DEI office will be working on. And I'm making a secondary pitch again for all town employees as well as community leaders to please participate in any focus group, at any surveys that you may see in your inbox. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal. Melissa?
Thanks so much, Jason, and thank you very much, Kamal. You did great off script. You can do it more often. You did great. I just wanted to comment on the leadership readiness. It was the 3 sessions that Jason and I were invited to, and it was really a great 3 meetings, really well facilitated. It actually gave me a lot of confidence in the group that we hired to lead the strategic plan, which was nice. And just a couple of thoughts to share with the rest of the board. When we talk about implementation and sort of like where the rubber meets the road, obviously we don't have a strategic plan yet to do that with, but our leadership on the select board is really going to be, I think, imperative to making lasting change both within and outside of town government. I also think that one of the ways in which we demonstrate leadership is through our ability to recognize when we make mistakes and talk about them. And language is one of the areas in which I think all town boards and committees can use some improvement. And it came to my attention that the word grandfathering has racist roots. I don't necessarily need to get too far into it tonight, but I think that there are alternatives that we can all consider using. And when we as a select board take leadership in making those small shifts, I think we'll see trickle down effects to other boards and committees and possibly staff. So we play a large part in how DEI efforts are going to be implemented community-wide. And I'm really excited for this process to continue. Thanks.
Thank you, Melissa. Any other comments or questions for Kamal? I also enjoyed those 3 sessions. It was enlightening, and I didn't really know what to expect. And I logged into that first one, and every single department head was there, community members. I don't know how many was there, Kamal, but it seemed like there was 30 people involved, and that was really refreshing. Libby, did you?
That is all for Kamal's report, I believe, but I wanted to thank him as well because he really did a good job putting those leadership readiness sessions together. It took a lot of work. It might not have seemed like it during the sessions, but a lot went into that. So Kamal, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody, is that it for that item? Anybody have any more questions on that? Okay, thanks, Kamal. Next, we're continuing our review of fiscal 23 enterprise fund budgets. And I think we have one more after this, which is solid waste, which is going to be reviewed with you at a workshop meeting on February 7th for long-term solid waste planning. And tonight we've got Our Island Home. And I think Bob is still on, and Brian, I think will introduce it, take you through it briefly and just open it up to you all for questions. This is also going to be reviewed with Finance Committee on Saturday. Brian, and then Bob.
Thank you, Libby. So I will, to the board, I will let Bob take you through the goals and initiatives and in that portion of the presentation. I want to focus somewhat on the numbers. The budget is increasing by a little over, oh, I'm sorry. Can you, perfect. Scroll all the way down, Erica, to the, yeah, one more. Here we go. So as you'll see in this slide, the budget is increasing about $500,000. The majority of this increase really is driven by benefits and staff salary changes for any of the contractually obligated contracts that are currently in force. Health insurance is is a big driver with this, including as well as salary and wages. We have not proposed any new positions. We have proposed converting 3 positions that are currently part-time into full-time, which will help provide better services to the residents of the island home. Over time, we have projected to tick up as well, just based on what we're seeing in trends. Professional services, and I will let Bob speak a little bit more to this when he speaks on the budget, but we are projecting a little bit of an increase potentially in the need for travel nurses, just to ensure that if we need them, we have the coverage and the funding. Other than that, Erica, can you go down to the next slide, please? So here are the exceptions, which we've noted. Maintenance position from part-time to full-time, projecting about $9,600 in increased cost with that. Certainly will help continue to, as we progress down the path of hopefully and eventually a new facility, it'll help better maintain the facility that we have right now. Activity director from part-time to full-time. I think this, Bob may speak a little bit more about this, but this certainly would provide additional benefits and activities for the enjoyment of the residents. And I think that we all think that that's very critical. In housekeeping position from part-time to full-time, approximately $10,000. Again, we think this is critical to maintain the facility and the cleanliness of the facility. Capital items, a new generator with shed of approximately $145,000. The current generator certainly does need to be replaced. This has gone to Capcom, and my recommendation to town administration and to finance committee would be that this would be funded out of retained earnings for the island home. And as we've all talked about last week, as part of the warrant, $8.5 million debt exclusion to begin the process of design and project management for a new facility. A few small operating item increases, as noted, the $50,000 for professional services for potential increased need for travel nurses. We certainly, on a year-over basis, look at what we're using for medical supplies, and we've seen a need for an increase there. And other expenses, I think I do need to let Bob explain that one because I can't recall that off the top of my head. I apologize for that.
That would make 2 of us. I think that was part of, what was that for, Libby? Was that the,
Sorry, which item?
the administration other expenses? For 50,000. I don't have my notes with me here. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'll have to, maybe if you have other stuff to go into, I can look it up.
Thank you.
But don't watch me, because no. Try to talk about something else while I'm looking it
Yeah,
up.
I mean, full disclosure to the board, I had some misunderstanding on my part in terms of tonight's meeting as opposed to the finance committee on Saturday, and not fully prepared for this, but I should be able to walk it through, I hope.
Bob, do you want to go through like the mission and the goals while we're?
Sure. All right, so you've got that queued up there, Brian. I'm not sure how the mission has changed since last year, but it's I believe pretty straightforward. I'm as an administrator, my focus is resident-centered care and working like a team, and everything in this budget in my discussions with those who primarily developed it are in line with those goals. Clearly, getting down to goal 1, the turnover and the lack of continuity in the administrator slot has been problematic, and you get fits and starts and different folks with different perspectives and lack of continuity. So, clearly that's a strong goal. And, I know Libby's working hard on it, and we'll hopefully find a solution for that. In terms of the other goals, it's basically some physical. Goal 2 is physical plant upgrade to the West Wing shower room. There is already new windows involved around the building, and these, I think, are some projects that had been approved in the past, but now through some funding dynamics, we're ready to bring it back to fruition. We did actually. Goal 3, we were fortunate that we were able to develop and actually just completed a affiliated training program for nurse aides in partnership with Cape Cod Community College. And we've actually already reaped the benefits of that in terms of bringing on some folks from that program, which we hosted students at. And we're following that model with the LPN training program. And just today I saw some of the initial brochures from Cape Cod Community, and we'll be seeking to help our recruitment of nurses so that we can minimize using agency nurses and provide better continuity of services for that. And I think goal 4 is kind of a human resources focus around retention of nursing staff and making sure we've got the work environment and the workload that is conducive to keeping the nurses that we do get. And that's so those are those overall goals. If you want to move down to initiatives and accomplishments, as I mentioned earlier, we've offered and completed the CNA certification program, and that's going well. We were also fortunate because of the COVID, there's been some relaxing of the hiring regulations around licensed certified nurses and nurse aides rather. And so we've been able to bring a few folks on in that respect. Last year's accomplishment, actually over the last year and a half, 18 months or so, we've had 3 COVID-19 DPH infection control surveys, and the building's been able to have 0 deficiencies with those surveys. That's critical because that first and foremost, because it means we're maintaining good resident care, and secondarily, it allows us to maintain open admissions and not being closed to that, so we can build up our revenue stream. Up until December, we had maintained a COVID-free status, which shouldn't be dismissed at all. It's things caught up with us, but to have gone as long as we had, or you folks had, they have done is speaks volumes for the care and the folks who work at our island home. Initiative 4, we implemented the assistant administrator position, and the person in that role now is been invaluable to me as I, familiarize myself with the building, and her familiarity and professionalism with the town process and her management skills have been, like I say, invaluable. So I appreciate that. Priorities for next year, staffing, 80-90% of nursing home costs are labor related. And, so clearly human resources and staffing issues are the priority in terms of providing service and managing expenses. The second priority is the new island home facility, and that's been a long discussion. I'm not going to get it too in depth with that. I think you folks have been around that island, no pun intended, more than once. So, where that process is ongoing. The way I see it has been a great amount of commitment from the community to upgrading the facility, and my focus is now, and I know Libby's and everyone's is just get objective data, get good communication, get the various customers and stakeholders in the process engaged, and work together to serve the community and the and those that need to access our services. Building upgrades is another priority. It's an older physical plant, and there are some issues that are ongoing that I think you folks are more familiar with than I, but I know some of it is the plumbing and sewage aspects are particularly challenging, I think, in terms of grades and the amount of flow that goes on. So that's clearly a priority. And again, another priority is the West Wing shower upgrades and the window projects. And as you see there, those are all on hold in prior fiscal years, and now they're being funded through capital funds. So that's what I've got. Did you figure out that $50,000 administrative?
Yep. So yes, we, Brian and I consulted, and we believe that had to do with some amenities in residence rooms, possibly flat screens, phones, and
that's right.
Wi-Fi improvements.
Yeah.
And also the individual's name, the assistant administrator, is Michelle Monroe. I just want to mention that to give her a shout out, because she and others at Island Home and Bob too have worked really round the clock to deal with this outbreak situation.
It's always, all of us who have, manage, you're always walking a line of who do you mention, who do you don't mention, and clearly Michelle merits great mention, and there are others, so you don't want to diminish her, but no matter what, tomorrow morning somebody will say, give me a kick in the side and say, what about me? But such is our lives.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions about that budget? Okay. Okay, moving on to the next item, the monthly town management report. Erica, do you have that handy? Okay, so as usual, I just tend to take you through the bold items as being sort of the more recent activity areas that we've been working on. So in the plans, reports, and studies category, we've, as the board will recall, you endorsed the Coastal Resiliency Plan at your meeting on January 5th. Next steps are a 2-day design thinking workshop, which we discussed last week or the week before, can't quite remember, with Arcadis. It's scheduled for March 7th and 8th. That's a Monday and a Tuesday. It's an all-day event, both days, 8:30 to 3:30, I think it is. And invites will be going out to that very shortly. It is intended to, again, bring together staff and various board, committee, and commission representatives who are going to be the most involved in projects and progression of the plan. The strategic plan, you've had some updates on that in November, and you next have a long-term planning solid waste workshop again on Monday, February 7th. The Nantucket water quality improvement plan. So I have had this on here for quite some time, and I finally have been able to get together with Wesson and Sampson and some other staff to review a report that Wesson and Sampson did for us over the past year. Even more so, it got a bit derailed by COVID, of course. And we now have an updated report with updated cost estimates and conceptual design. And that review is scheduled for your meeting next week. And I've notified the Nantucket reps that we had been talking to about this. So hopefully they will come on to the meeting. The facilities master plan, no big news there. We haven't really progressed that too far until the facilities director position was filled, which it is now, but now other positions need to be backfilled there. And eventually we're going to need some direction from the board about the DPW facility. However, in the interim, we are continuing to explore the Delta area property for that to be relocated to, as you have heard in prior meetings. Baxter Road long-term planning. You approved a scope of work with Arcadis at your meeting on January 12th. We have a kickoff meeting tomorrow with Arcadis and a number of town staff to go over who's going to be doing what with regard to the long-term planning. One of the early activities will be a meeting with abutters to review the conceptual design here and what it all might entail. And we may need to go onto some of these properties. Not may, we will need to go onto some of these properties to do things like borings and endangered species surveys, things of that nature. PFAS risk assessment townwide. PFAS everything is still very much ongoing, very much involving several town staff members. There's some bold updates there. I won't read all of that, but there is a public information session tentatively scheduled for March 24th, and late today at some point, I think I heard Greg say he wasn't sure if that was going to be on or not, but we'll have more information for you as that develops. Lots of meetings, of course, going on. 2022 annual town meeting prep is taking, a lot of time. We've got a DPW weekly operations meeting. Go down a bit, Erica, please. Still working on public works, project prioritization, stormwater, and Children's Beach pump station project that we are working on a report that we're going to be bringing to you all, hopefully within the next month or so. Myself and Jericho Mealy, our Human Services Director, have been attending Behavioral Health Steering Committee meetings. Those are just about every other week. Of course, Island Home, various meetings on that, the proposed new facility planning, as well as just admin meetings with the administrator and other staff. SBPF and the Baxter Road relocation I mentioned, those are taking some time. We have a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers supply chain study. I think we've reviewed that with you before. I'm not the lead on that, but other staff people are, and that is requiring some meetings as well. Some of us attended the 31 Fairgrounds Housing Project groundbreaking last Friday, I think that was. And that was very exciting. Lots of projects underway. I'll just try to get through these as best I can. Novadear Fieldhouse construction's underway. The third sewer force main, the sewer director and I talked about this yesterday. We're waiting on a final timeline. There are supply chain impacts, surprise on that. So they don't have a firm start date at this point. Construction's underway at Waite Drive. Baxter Road we discussed, DEI strategic plan we discussed. We do have a classification and compensation study that I guess we haven't awarded the contract yet, but that is pending approval by you all very shortly, and hopefully that will start this spring. We're working to get you a committee handbook update. Employee housing remains a very critical issue, both seasonal and year-round, and we're looking at a variety of options. We're working on, I think we mentioned this before, a town employee survey, but before that, we want to have sort of concentrated small meetings with individual unions to get their input on what they think could be done or could be considered or might be feasible to address the needs of their employees. There could be different needs for different unions, depending on work schedules and types of housing desired, things like that. We do have a procurement out for town employee rental housing, and the idea there is that people would sort of submit their properties for rent. The town would rent them, and then when needed by an employee, they would take over the rental payments, but we would hold it so that we would have it available. So far, however, I'm told we have not received any bids. We told you a while ago that we had issued a playing field maintenance bid, and that came back at a very high number. It was about $400,000 per year for 3 years. And we have since had our new park and rec manager modify that bid, streamline it a bit, and we have reissued it. Some of the stuff I've already mentioned, these things here I've already mentioned. And we're, yeah. Keep going down a bit. Some stuff has had to be put on hold because of COVID. We're slowly trying to get our way back to that because, of course, in the interim, lots of other things have come up. Personnel, collective bargaining is ongoing, not for all units, but many still out there. Transportation planner, I think I saw some progress on that earlier today in email, but honestly, I didn't get to it, so I'm not quite sure what happened there. DPW director, we've interviewed some finalists and hope to make a recommendation to you all very shortly. The assistant town manager for administration is out being advertised currently, and we've hired the park and rec manager, as you know. I think is that the end? I think that's the end.
Hey, Jason, it's Matt. Just, Libby, one thought on when you talk about housing, I think we need to think bigger on fairgrounds and do a conceptual for the entire property. You know, and so we could do it we could plan it eventually in phases, but I think we have to think big enough. This issue isn't going away. It's not going away for the private sector. It's not going away for the town. And if we want to be able to operate, I think we could design really nice housing that people would love to live in. And that could be, you know, would fit right in with the neighborhood. I just think there's, you know, I just think we have to look bigger. And so when we're talking about it, you know, sort of, you know, people love downtown, put some density in, put some roads in, make it a place that, you know, put some a green space to use, just make that whole area, you know, maximize it and make it nice. And I think that was the plan originally when we bought it 20 years ago. And I think now, you know, we're lucky we have it. And I think it should be sort of, you know, in the hopper when you guys are talking about it.
Do you mean where do you mean exactly? The
I think 4 and 6 fairgrounds, the back of Waite Drive, the parking area, Tacoma, the lot, you know, all the different town lots. We should be looking at it from a sort of, you know, from a, you know, a mile high look and say, what would, you know, if we were doing it well, what would it look like? What would it feel like there? You know, how would we do it? Because I think we're not going to be able to operate the town in 10 years if we continue this direction.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think we definitely understand that there is a portion of that property already under design for, or will be if we get a town meeting appropriation. No, we have a town meeting appropriation, could be constructed following the completion of design for seasonal housing. And I mean, if we're still considering this area, the property to fairgrounds for centralized municipal facility, then that is going to take up quite a bit of space. We certainly could take, and then we have 6 fairgrounds with Tacoma Green already there. Tacoma Way, there are lots over on that side. And we have talked to the Affordable Housing Trust about what could possibly be developed over there. And we just haven't gotten back to that, but we will. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's all great. But my point is, like, take the big look and say, where would they go, and sort of lay it out. And then, so it's designed and fits well and looks great. So it's a place that people want to be.
Gotcha. And Tucker, I see, is an attendee. So he and I will be discussing this at our meeting tomorrow morning. Anybody have any other questions about the town manager report? Okay. Okay, next. Sorry. Brian and I both are going to review our recommendations for free cash allocations. So we want to start off with a massive caution at our large number for certified free cash that is available for appropriation, 19.2 million. It's the largest free cash number we have ever had. And Brian and I agree, it will not happen again. There are some specific circumstances that led to this, and we are not the only town that is seeing a larger than usual certified free cash number. due to things like uncertainty with COVID, which led to tighter budgets, conservative revenue estimates, and really just tight budgeting. So Brian can go through how it came about. Our recommendations are listed out here. It would leave us with unallocated free cash of 5.3 million. However, we do have some other additional items that we have been discussing, which are shown below, which we think might be appropriate. But we also want to caution, please don't allocate all of this, because we are still in an uncertain time. And people, we know that people are jumping all over the short-term rental revenue, which is totally understandable, but we still have not seen a normal year of it. And I know that people think it's going to be normal that way going forward, and maybe it will, but it's our job to look at the big picture and be cautious about spending. Brian, do you want to explain any more about the number?
Sure. So I do want to echo the town manager's comments that I don't ever expect that we will see a number this high. It was even a little bit of a shock when we put this in and submitted it to DOR that it was this high. The majority of this really comes from really only two places: very conservative revenue budgeting for fiscal 21, which generated just in the neighborhood of approximately about $10 to $11 million in surplus revenue based on where rooms and meals tax and meals tax ended up, along with the building permits, electrical and plumbing permits, and then certainly increased tax collections and some increased collections with respect to motor vehicle excise. All were contributory to this on the revenue side. And then not only with the conservative budgeting on the expense side, as the town manager indicated, but certainly the department heads were very cognizant of the difficulties that we anticipated and what we were going through. So everybody certainly did an exceptional job in 21 of managing their budgets, which did contribute some turnbacks to be able to create a number of this magnitude. So we have proposed, in my discussions with the town manager and our recommendations as set forth, would, as we noted in our budget presentation, would allocate $692,000 for one-time expense increases in the town, $200,000 of expense increase request for the school. We're recommending $8,221,000 for school and capital requests. I do want to make one note: within that $8,221,000, there already is an initial allocation for coastal resilience planning of $500,000. We are potentially reserving $20,000 for unpaid bills. We're making a recommendation to fund the stabilization fund, increase that from its $5.8 million currently in it to 7.3 with a $1.5 million contribution. Capital stabilization fund, we're proposing adding $1,250,000, which would double that to $2.5 million. We, as a community, much like every community across the Commonwealth, have an extremely large amount of vacation and sick leave on the books that employees are eligible to have bought back from them when they leave employ of the town. So we are proposing, with free cash at the level that it is, that we would recommend beginning the fund and these stabilization fund for $1,500,000, which we had already adopted. This would be the first payment into that fund. And then I think, as I had mentioned at a previous meeting when we were discussing potential uses, my recommendation to the town manager was, in fiscal 21, we did not raise and appropriate a $500,000 contribution to OPEB. And with free cash at the level it is at, I recommended to the town manager, and I'm recommending that the board consider using $500,000 to make that catch up from fiscal 21 that we didn't put into the OPEB trust fund. Additional items that are under consideration and certainly could potentially be allocated from the 5.3 million, an additional 500,000 to coastal resilience planning. We're considering and having discussions about establishing 250,000 as a baseline for facility repairs to the concessions. Potentially putting some money, as has been done previously in the past, into the private road revolving fund of 50,000. We have this on the I think this is still an open discussion, but potential additional funding for NCTV for hybrid meeting support, potentially around 30,000. But if this becomes an ongoing request, I may try to find the money in the budget to be able to fund that. And as part of the budget discussion, we did mention some unknowns, particularly around solid waste and potentially any operating deficits that may projected in fiscal 22 that we may have to cover through the general fund, and potentially additional funding for fiscal 23, as we haven't brought forth any discussion or proposed an override to fund the solid waste deficit that may exist between what we believe the revenues are and what the current subsidy and retained earnings are in order to fund the ongoing operations. So currently, our proposal leaves $5.3 million unallocated. Last year, we did have about just over 3.5 million unallocated that carry forward. I think it would be prudent, given the fact that if anything happens between now and when we set the tax rate free, or between now and June, actually, that this would be one of the funding sources that we would have if we needed any additional funding sources or a special town meeting to do it. So I think that it is appropriate that we potentially carry some over as a starting point. So I'm happy to entertain any questions if the board has any, or turn this back over to the town manager.
I have one question. Oh, Matt, go ahead first.
No, just a couple of comments. I think funding the stabilization, funding OPEB, I think that's all, conservative, smart things to be doing. I think there's a lot of good things there. If whichever pocket of money, the stabilization or the capital fund, whichever one will potentially be able to fund coastal resiliency in the future, I think we need to keep funding that now because we've got some big expenses. And then just a general comment on the repair for concessions. Don't forget the Historical Commission has offered to do a survey, which is the first step for the jetties or for the other, maybe for children's. There may be grant money available for the survey. There may be grant money available to sort of fix those buildings over time. And I would take them up on that if they are willing to do it. Leverage the money we're going to spend for that. I'm doing it myself at Cliff Road. We did it at 79 Orange Street for Flock, for Sheila's shop. And there are some great, resources for historic buildings, and the town should take advantage of it.
Thank you, Matt. I only have one comment. I talked a little bit about this today. Free cash, we always have to be careful about everybody wanting to have some of that for their projects or things. But I was happy to see some potential kind of one-offs that could help. Coastal resiliency, NCTV 18 hybrid, as we are figuring out the hybrid model is really working. What equipment do we need, or contracting NCTV 18? Very helpful. I would like to see, and I have some ideas, some things in health and human services, things that are one-offs, whether it's a study, feasibility study, something, whether it's around substance abuse or nothing that I'm not asking for anything to go to the CRC grant, because full disclosure that we apply for that at Fairwinds, which I'm a part of. I mean, other things that wouldn't take a lot of time from staff because everybody is full out and everything. So, but if there are certain things where we could get help from consultants, $50,000, $100,000, that would really help kind of move the needle for our most kind of challenging areas with health and human services. I usually say health and housing, but I think we have housing really well funded this year, asking for the other 10 million. So I think I might try to put in and ask around to add some things that are very light to that 5.3 contribution. I'll reach out to you, Libby, on that. Is that something that would have to be at select board, go to town meeting? How does that work, that process, if there is a suggestion?
Well, we would want to probably bring something more final back to the board at some point, because it would also need to work its way into a FinCom motion, because free cash requires approval by town meeting for appropriation.
Okay. Thank you.
So we have to be kind of definitive about what we're talking about.
Mhm.
But we have a little bit of time for that.
Anyone else? Thoughts or comments? Okay, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Libby.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you.
Anything else, Libby, on yours?
No, that's it for the town manager's report. I
Okay.
can go over the warrant.
Yep, yeah. Next up is the adoption of the 2022 annual town meeting and election warrant. This is the last day to do that.
Erica, do you have a handy? So it's in pretty good shape. I last updated it not too long before the meeting started. I just want to take you through what's changed. Okay, so Article 7, we've made these are just notes from last week and maybe even the prior week. And we've already gone over this with you. We've increased the seasonal schedules a little bit because we need to be competitive this summer. And we did some surveying of Cape towns and what they're paying these similar positions in their towns, and we were way under. So we've raised them a bit. So this just reflects all of that. And the town is, sorry, go back up a tad. Yeah, right there. The town is going to be back to managing a tennis program at Jetties this summer. So we're going to need to get staff going on that. So we added back in the tennis attendant position. All right, keep going. All right, now go back up to 11, Article 11. So you all already know this, but we're starting to get some questions about debt exclusions and how they're going to work and be voted on. So currently, as you've known, what I'm going to go through right now are standalone articles. They will be individually voted on by a town meeting. They are subject to motions by the Finance Committee and also ballot questions, which are at the end of this warrant, which we'll get to in a second. So the first one would be Article 11, which is design of a new island home facility. And the numbers, as you know, come in the motion for the Finance Committee. The number for the island home design, I believe, is 8.5 million. Article 12 is a supplemental.
Jason, should we discuss these as we go if we have comments, or if we want to place a comment, or
I would rather do that
do
because I'd rather do that as we go because it's hard to go back for everybody to remember what was said before.
Okay,
If
but
that's
remember,
okay with you, Libby?
yeah, but just remember, your comments are, I mean, you guys can talk about what comments you want to have, but this isn't the warrant where the comments will appear. This is just the warrant telling the voters what you're voting on, and then subject to the FinCom motions and your comments, which is scheduled for early to mid-March, I believe.
Yep. Matt, do you have something now for OIA?
well, just on Island Home, I'm just going to be consistent. I think that it's premature to bring this forward at this time. I would like to. I think we need to negotiate the needed union change in working conditions, especially being able to have housing. And I have serious concerns about the town's ability to operate. That we could build a brand new, beautiful building, but I have serious concerns about our ability to operate it. There was an article, Nantucket Cottage Hospital's got 50 positions open, and we're facing the same thing. So, I'd like to get that stuff in place first, especially the housing piece, and before we bring this. And that's just I have to put that on the record because that's what I say. I know I'm not supported on that at this point. Maybe someday I will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Article 12 is a supplemental appropriation for the Harbor Master Building. I think you all are familiar with that. That is 2 million. Appropriation for Pleasant Street and the Pleasant Street sidewalk repaving. We have this in, the number still does need a little bit of work, but this is a street that is on our road pavement management report as a high level of street that needs to be repaved, including the sidewalk and sidewalks repaired or reconstructed. That right now, that I think is 2 or 2.5 million, but again, it needs a little bit of work. Article 14 is an appropriation for Lorraine Barracks repairs. We reviewed this with you a couple of times since it first came up. It's a $4.5 million project. It includes hazardous waste removal and lots of other work that is become very costly. Article 15 is the school department athletic facilities. Keep going down with that. For 16.4 million. I think you all are familiar with this. And sidebar, I believe the school's campus-wide master plan work group is coming to your meeting on February 9th to review where they are with this plan. Article 16 is design of a central municipal facility, and that design is, Brian, I don't have that number right in front of me. Is it 6.5?
It's 6 million, I think is what the number is, Libby.
Thank you.
6.5, but it is in that, yes.
Article 17 is construction of town employee housing. We had a prior approval for design, and it's really what we're talking about here is seasonal housing. And we've talked to you about this before, very similar to the sort of housing that the Nantucket Yacht Club built. And we said town employee without using seasonal so as to provide a little bit of flexibility in the event that perhaps there would be an apartment in there for a year-round employee, or perhaps even there could be some additional space for year-round employees. 18 is PFAS soil investigation. I think this is 2 million, Brian, 2.5. It's continuing our
2 million.
Thank you. It's continuing our evaluations of PFAS. Article 19, you all know about an appropriate real estate acquisition of 10 to 12 Washington Street. That's 4.75 million. Article 20, go down a bit. Okay, so Article 20, I highlighted $10 million. This is affordable housing capital expenditures because I wanted you to see that per your prior discussions, we've included that number in the article. As you have seen, the other articles don't have the number in there because I think that you wanted to be sure that that number got carried forward in the event that there may be a differing FinCom motion.
Libby, on that one, I thought the original, I'm reading it and it says for the purpose of capital expenditures for the cost of acquiring real estate. I think we were mostly looking for that to not acquire more land, but to help with the existing projects that we have. Did we write it that way just to make it more broad, just in case?
Yep, it's to make it as flexible as possible. And it mirrors, I think, last year's wording. Correct, Brian and John. And I think this, as you keep going there, including any buildings they're on for the development of affordable housing, which may include blah, blah, blah. But I think it does, as far as I am told as to how it's written, it will cover not just acquiring real estate, but also making improvements to already owned property.
Do you or Brian or suggest to keep that part in there about acquiring real estate? Because I just want to make sure that it passes. I don't want.
Brian, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest leaving it in from the standpoint that it provides the flexibility, but with the understanding that the intent is that it's to more expected to be used for the current projects that are anticipated right now. I think that certainly defer to you and the board, Mr. Chairman, but I think if we take it out and something came up, we would have a hard time getting bond counsel to agree to let us do it if this were to be the only available source of money that was available at the time. So I think that from a flexibility standpoint, it would make sense to leave it in with the understanding that the intent is that this be used for current projects already anticipated.
Okay, is there, once we accept this, could we, if we wanted to, even against your suggestion, Brian, take that part out at a later time, cut the branches of the tree? Or is it, I just want to make sure that it passes. And I think our original attempt that the select board talked about, support members, was to have it for existing projects because, and Melissa or Don or Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So we're not acquiring more land, more projects, and not because it's too much to handle. Go ahead,
I
Brian.
think either Libby or John can correct me, but I think that the motion, the FinCom motion, if it were to be, could be made without it in, correct, Libby? If that was the intent.
I would look to John for that. I think it would be less restrictive, so probably, but John?
That's correct. I agree.
Okay. Melissa, and then we'll go to the attendees.
Okay, thanks, Jason. I don't think that in my understanding of the proposal, we wanted to significantly limit this article to anything. I do think our recommendation was to model it off of last year's warrant with the intention of guiding principles for how the Affordable Housing Trust would use that investment, but we just don't know what is going to be coming down the pike. And this is, in my opinion, to add to their resources to be responsive to what does come down the pike. So I don't recommend changing the language, and this is in line with what my intent was as a select board member.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Vicki, you had your hand up?
So I just wanted to add that I did model this article after what was last year's article, with the intent that it would allow a lot of flexibility for spending on different types of projects that may come down. The understanding being that most of the money probably would go towards design of new projects on the land that the trust already has, but this would enable the trust to be able to acquire some land that may come available that they're just not, foreseeing right now.
Okay, got it.
So it gives them the flexibility.
Yeah, thank you. Don, and then Matt.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate having the same flexibility, but I think that we did have some discussion of maybe not acquiring new property, but still allowing that as an option. I think is positive.
Okay, thank you. Matt?
It says, and for all of the costs incidental and related thereto. Is that the phrase is this allowed to be done to be used for buy downs or for purchases of, say, a year-round restriction? Not necessarily a price restriction, just a year-round restriction. Is it able to be used for that type of use?
Vicki?
Generally, that really would be more under, an acquisition of a property interest. This is generally language that's included in many of our articles for acquisitions that cover things like legal costs, survey costs, permitting costs, things like that. So it's generally engineering, inspections, things like that. That's usually what that is for.
Thank you, Vicki. We okay if we go to the?
Sorry, I was just going to comment. If the board wanted to add something about things like buy downs and restrictions and things, Vicki, could we put something after, kind of in the middle there, for the purposes of capital expenditure for costs requiring real estate? Work it in somewhere in there, including, is there some catch-all language that could be used to identify those things that Matt mentioned?
So we could add some language. We could actually add perhaps either buy downs or acquisition of property interests, which is also another way of addressing it. So we could change that language if we wanted to specifically include that.
So I guess that's a board call.
I'm fine with that. The flexibility is what we're looking for. Do we need a motion or just a thumbs up, consent? Or will there be a motion at the end?
Yeah, I think a consent, if you want to add something like that, would be helpful.
Yep, thumbs up from Melissa. Don, yes. Jason, yes. Matt, yes. Okay.
Okay, so Vicki, can you get me that first thing?
Yes.
Thank you. And
Okay.
we'll have to review it with bond counsel again, Brian,
Okay.
and also change the ballot question.
Libby, is it okay if I go to attendees? Okay.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Sure. Okay. Rick Atherton? I don't want to mess up your flow, Libby. Hi, Rick. Go ahead.
Hi, Jason. Thank you. Just one general question about your process here. There are a lot of articles, and I'm not sure you want to entertain public comment on any one as to how citizens feel about the appropriateness of putting it on the warrant, or whether you want to wait till the end. I was just trying to get a feel for your sense of how to deal with specific articles, or are you going to deal with the warrant as a whole, and we'll just kind of move on. So I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm just trying to understand how to deal with these. I could give you some examples, but I won't right now. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question, Rick. I think ideally I'd like, for hot topic things, housing, STRs, where I would like to have people talk about them in that moment. I think if there's a lot of kind of clarifying questions, it'd be nice if everybody kept those at the end, and we could do that. But of course, everybody's issue is not a clarifying question. It's really important. So I would say we're just going to take it as we go. And then if it gets too long, maybe we can amend it as we go. Tucker? Knowing that there's not going to be a lot of changes at the last moment, but I know a couple articles people will want to discuss. Go ahead, Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank you to Matt for bringing that point up, and agree completely with what Melissa said. The intention here is for this to be very flexible, and it is intended to be toward seeing through projects that are in the pipeline. But as has been mentioned, we don't know what opportunities may come. We are seeing more folks, let's say, making inquiries following the example of the Bird family and the bargain sale that they did with the White Street property as well. And that can address a home ownership need that has not received a lot of attention in our efforts to date. But also another unknown is how our 10% requirement is going to change following the 2020 census. And we are anticipating knowing that sometime this spring. DHCD controls that schedule, but I think having some flexibility to the use of these funds is key. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker. Any other comments? Can Libby move on? Okay, I think we're good.
Okay. I might skim through some of these a bit because they're all standard articles. 21, 22, 23, 24, all annual articles, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. We've gone over all these, 34, 35. Now we're starting to get into other areas. 35 is the CPC article. 36 is a CPC article. 37 is CPC. 38 is citizen. 39. This is the board's general bylaw for short-term rental regulations. It's been modified slightly, I think, since your last meeting. John, you may have to identify what changed, but I think it was not much.
Thank you, Libby. Yes, the way this has changed from what you saw previously is we wanted to make sure that the definition of short-term rentals met two criteria. One is that it generally track the short-term rentals that are defined under the general law, but also to make sure that our definition was consistent with the zoning bylaw. So although there is some language change here, in essence, the short-term rental registration would apply to any short-term rental property that meets the definition in the general bylaw of residential units. And so I did meet with the planning board on Monday, and we had a very good discussion. And I don't mean to speak for them, but I think they were satisfied with the way this was structured. Although their focus is really on the zoning, we wanted to make sure that it was consistent, that the general bylaw was consistent with zoning, and that we wouldn't be capturing two different sets of rental units.
John, is this is the time when Matt and I can ask questions, but we can't deliberate, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, but we can, for clarification, or Dave Iverson or Nat Lowell from the planning board could answer questions.
Yes.
Or chime in.
Yes, and I would also point out, Jason, because I know this question has come up in the past, once you get to the end of the warrant, and if there's a motion to approve the warrant, then all four members in attendance at this meeting are eligible to vote on adoption of the warrant. Two of your members who have been recusing themselves should not participate in any of the deliberations as to any of the short-term rental articles, but they can certainly vote to approve the warrant.
Okay, I have another.
And so I would also point out that any member of the select board can attend the planning board hearing or the finance committee hearing and express their personal views. You may also be able to include, I apologize, you may also be able to include a comment or a recommendation later on in March if Christie is back in commission. Then the three of you could vote on that recommendation. That would be a quorum.
Okay, I have a question for today. If we wanted to make a change or add something like we did for, say, the housing one, for example, could we do that with just two of us?
No, I don't think so, Jason. I think that would constitute a deliberation. I think you could certainly, as part of the select board recommendation on this warrant article, once the warrant is posted, you can do that as long as you have a quorum to act.
So
but if you have clarifying questions, you can certainly ask those questions of staff.
Yeah, well, I think that's clear. I just want to make sure if we want to change something on Article 39 or Article, well, anything with short-term rentals, we probably cannot do that tonight because we don't have a quorum. We can only ask questions.
Right.
Okay, sorry. Matt, I saw your hand up. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, did staff consider putting the regulations after the zoning article in the warrant? And the reason I'm saying that is if the zoning article fails, do we want to be doing the regulations second? You know, so is there any discussion of that?
Yes, and the recommendation was put the general bylaw article first.
All right, so then the other, so I'll wait to talk about the zoning article till we get to the zoning article. I have watched the planning board, and it's still pretty unclear to me how we're going to be able to, you know, sort of rein something back in. You know, it kept going there was sort of the discussion was, well, that'll happen through the regulations. That'll happen through the regulations. And John answered it, you know, John Jojo during the meeting, but it was still pretty unclear to me how it was that it was really going to work that way. But you know, and again, I'm just gonna, you know, for the record, this is not. It's difficult to not be able, you know. So I can't talk about that. So procedurally, one of the issues that I have is we received the zoning article at 4 p.m. on the 19th. We had no quorum. It was blank. So we had no quorum to agree to put it in. So I look at that and I say, well, wait a minute, could we even put it in? And at the bottom of the zoning article, it says select board for the planning board, or, for the planning board. And I'm looking at that thinking it's a tacit approval of something we haven't been allowed to talk about, and we haven't had a public hearing about, and we haven't discussed. So I kind of think that those types of things procedurally should be removed until we can discuss them. Is that, John, am I thinking this wrong?
Matt, I think a little bit, because to be honest with you, because the operative act that the select board is going to take is to adopt the warrant tonight. And as I've said, you can do that on a vote of the 4 members who are in attendance. If you're not satisfied with this article being in the warrant, while there can't be a specific discussion about it, you could certainly vote no, or vote to postpone the adoption of the warrant, move to postpone the adoption of the warrant. That would be an option for you to pursue. But the adoption of the warrant is the operative vote. As I said, it's going to take place later in this meeting.
Matt, do you have anything else? Or do you want to follow up?
I feel like I'm in 1984, but.
Anything else from, well, I guess it's just me and you, Matt. I was going to say from other board members. We can go to Rick Atherton. Rick? And then if Dave Iverson or Nat Lowell like to ask any questions or review, clarify anything after Mr. Atherton, that would be fine. Or you can wait for
Thank you,
your.
Jason. Jason, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
All right, thank you. Yeah, it might be better that I could pull a Barry Rector and comment after the comments of Dave Iverson and Nat Lowell, but I'll be happy to go ahead. I listened to most of, if not all, of the planning board meeting, and it seems to me that there are a couple of important issues here in terms of including primarily the zoning article, but it's related to Article 39, which is on the screen, on the agenda. I don't feel as a citizen that enough has been held in terms of discussion about the options about the zoning article. It's just the way it was described at your meeting of the joint meeting of the select board and the planning board, 3 or 4 months ago. Nothing's changed. Nothing has come forward to show what options there might be. I think the discussion at the planning board, and I'll say this, John, so you understand, I'm speaking to John Giorgio now, and he said, it's no problem. You can vote that zoning article in and then pass any regulation you want. And I think I take exception to that. It's difficult. People will claim that regulations have to conform to the zoning article, and the zoning article will take precedence. And I don't think you should be putting the zoning article on the warrant until it has a full and fair hearing. And I think if you do, at the very least, the select board, given your sort of problems of voting on these and commenting, or the planning board should recommend that the planning article not be approved unless the Article 39 is approved about regulating and collecting information about short-term rentals on the island. There has not been enough, I think, open, honest information presented about the impact of these and the trend of these over time to move so quickly on the zoning article. It can wait a year, or it can wait till the fall. And that would be my recommendation to you, to take that article out of the town warrant. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I'm sorry, Leslie Snell is here as well, the Deputy Planning Director. So Leslie, if you wanted to clarify anything, please jump in. I'm sorry I didn't announce you there.
Jake,
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
sorry, my button's stuck. I just want to confirm right now, we're talking about Article 39, not the
Correct.
zoning article, correct?
Right. Yep.
Okay, so I'll save any comments for the zoning article if needed.
Okay. Are we good here? Matt, anything else?
Well, I would like to say some of the thing, say with some of the things that Rick said or talk about it, but we're not allowed to. I feel, so I could ask questions, but what, I'm just flummoxed at how to deal with this, Jason. I'm just,
Yeah, I understand.
I feel like we're being railroaded. I don't,
Yeah, I don't feel we're being railroaded, but I think this is very complicated. Dave Iverson, from Planning Board. Dave, I see your hand up.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Can I ask John Giorgio a couple questions to you, please, Jason?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Is there a way for the planning board to regulate STRs without first codifying them in the zoning bylaws or the zoning regulations?
Dave, I think we had a discussion about that the other night at the planning board. And one of the questions that came up was whether or not the planning board that is, could as part of a special permit application prohibit short-term rentals as a condition of this special permit. And I think Andrew was pretty clear on that, and I certainly concur. That's not a recommended course of action. You have two decisions that I'm aware of, and I really can't get into too much discussion because the second one may be subject to litigation, but you have two zoning board decisions that upheld decisions by the building commissioner, which denied enforcement action, finding that short-term rentals is allowed by right as an accessory use. Okay, now it's all well and good for the building inspector to have that opinion, and I think you have an excellent building inspector. But I think the point here is that if you don't clarify short-term rental use as an allowed use in all residential dwellings, subject, as you'll see, to the restrictions in the zoning bylaw, you are going to be you're going to continue to have to deal with litigation and other uncertainty regarding the regulation of short-term rentals as a matter of zoning. And so it's certainly my recommendation that you address it head on. And that's what the zoning bylaw does. I don't think you necessarily have to have a zoning bylaw amendment to regulate Article 39, the short-term rental regulation. That's a general bylaw. And that really is concerned with ensuring that the town knows where these rentals are, has a registration system, and most importantly, has a mechanism to ensure that short-term rentals do not cause a nuisance or excess or overburdening traffic and parking. And all of those regulations that will be enacted pursuant to the bylaw are not subject to any, I guess I shouldn't use the word grandfathering. They're not subject to any prohibitions. They would be pre-existing uses. And they are now, according to your building inspector and according to your zoning board of appeals. But I do think you need to address that uncertainty. And this is a comprehensive way to address that uncertainty. And I would encourage you not to think that the authority contained in those regulations will not have a lot of enforcement teeth in them. And that's the way you can regulate short-term rentals. The statute, the short-term rental statute expressly authorizes towns to enact bylaws. Now, yeah, we had a discussion the other night about, does it have to be zoning? Could it be a general bylaw? And I did say that, the verdict is not in on that, only because there hasn't been a decision by a court, in my experience, to address that. But I certainly think a compelling argument can be made based upon the statute that you can regulate the nuisance effects of short-term rentals through regulations enacted by the Board of Health under the general bylaw.
Thank you, John. I think Dave took his hand down, so he's, if you have any follow-ups at all.
Yeah, I'm good for now, Jason. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have another chance to talk about this with the zoning. Matt, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to ask it as a question. I guess the question to John is, John, we're looking at this. So if we take the position that the building inspector takes, which is that it is an existing use and it's allowed because it's already been used in everywhere else everywhere it's already been allowed. If we take that position and we continue that, I sense that that's different than what we're doing. I think we're not codifying it for the people that exist. If I'm reading this correctly, we're codifying it anywhere for anyone on the island, correct?
Yep. Well, the bylaw would apply to future conversions of property to short-term rentals. That's correct.
And so what we're saying is that it will be okay to have in this, I'm asking the question again, we're looking at this, it will be okay for any property, any other than the workforce housing, that have to get a special permit, but every other property anywhere else on the island, what we're saying, will be allowed to convert to a short-term rental at any time and then go away from it and go back and forth within those regulations, correct?
That's already happening. Yes, that's already the practice in the town.
It sort of is, and it sort of, so I can't talk about that. So that's what we're saying. So if someone has concerns about the impact on it, so one of the things that I noticed from the meeting the other day from the planning board, there was a lot of talk about noise, but there wasn't any talk about what the long-term impacts will be on year-round housing, on workforce housing, et cetera. Those were not quantified. And there's been a transition. And so if someone has a concern about that, will either of these articles deal with that concern?
John, did you have anything there?
Mr. Chair.
Hold on, what's that? I just want to see if John wanted to say anything, answer Matt's comment.
No, I mean, if you read the statutory authority for the enactment of regulations, it does specify that you can enact regulations limiting the number of days that you can engage in a short-term rental operation. It says you can limit the areas where short-term rentals are permitted. But the way you would do that, it seems to me, as I've indicated, is through the general bylaw and the regulations.
Matt?
Hey.
So let's say it's a
Sorry,
future.
now we go to Matt. Matt finish his idea.
Yep.
Yeah, so John, I'm following that. So let's say that in the future, this is sort of a follow-up on Rick Atherton asked. Let's say in the future that we, as a community, decide we don't, and I'm just picking this, I'm not saying to do it, we don't want short-term rentals in the countrysides areas. Could we, at that point, change this short-term rental regulation and say no more short-term rentals in the country. It's only allowed in town areas. Could we, and would that be enacted, and would there be a phasing? I'm not going to use the other word. I don't know what to use in place of it yet. I'll get there.
Pre-existing non-conforming.
There you go. Pre-existing non-conforming. Thank you. So pre-existing non-conforming, would all those then be pre-existing non-conforming and, but no one else could do it and that would not be challenged? We'd be okay?
Yes, you would be.
Okay.
Okay, so Nat, you can if you have a question for John or something, then I want to go to I got 3 people with their hands up.
I'm sure you do. I don't know how to do the hand on my iPad. I think John's doing a really good job explaining what we discussed. I just want to sort of just, roll back a little bit on this. The Styler case, John, you can correct me if I'm off a little bit. That came up last summer, correct? That was,
I think it was last spring, but yes.
Spring, yeah, okay. So, and there's provisions in that where, this is the same thing on the Cape, when in places like Nantucket and the Cape, it doesn't really apply. It's a completely different scenario, and that keeps getting brought up over and over again. And Nantucket is nothing like that. We don't have hotels. We don't have choices of where people can go. And people's houses have been traditionally rented here for over 100 years. I think that when we talk about the housing piece, that is impossible to have some sort of report where you have people that have to rent their homes that are not millionaires, but they have the money to buy a house here, but they need to rent it to keep it. There's a lot of people like that, including the guy that does the color for the Bruins bought a house here 2 years ago and has to rent it for a short term in the summer in order to keep it. And there's a lot of people that are not wealthy enough to not have to rent. Okay, so to say that we're going to create housing, or that we're eliminating housing by allowing short-term rentals is impossible to make a case for that. Now, the thing about this, when we hear the whole island-wide term, I just want to sort of explain that a little bit. This practice is island-wide. So if we don't put this in the regulation, in the zoning bylaw as an allowed use, then we're going to continue to see the horrific situation that took place at the 9 West Dover Street hearing. And I urge every Nantucketer to go on to YouTube and watch that hearing. And I certainly don't wish that upon any neighbor of mine or anybody else in this community. So that would be my statement right now, Jason.
Thank you. Now we'll talk about the zoning bylaw as well. There'll be another chance.
Yeah.
Can we go to Brooke Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am curious. I'm having a hard time understanding why we need the zoning bylaw at this town meeting when it's so unclear what the impact. We don't have, it doesn't feel like we have clear answers. And I'd also like to say that I don't have any numbers to back this up, but I do have a lot of stories of people who have lost their housing because it has been sold into the seasonal market to folks who make the dollars work because they can short-term rent to afford to buy that house. And what is happening is market prices rise. Those buyers are coming into neighborhoods that have never been attractive to the seasonal buyer. And our year-round neighborhoods are being eroded by the short-term rental market and the financial incentives of short-term rentals. I don't know what the answer to slowing that down is, but I know in my gut, if we don't find a way to slow this down, we will have so many seasonal homes that are rented short-term, and that balance against year-round housing is going to create an economic nightmare here, because there will be nowhere for the people to live who need to service those seasonal homes. And we need to think of this across our economy in terms of balancing seasonal ownership with year-round ownership. And there are ways to accept residents who live here, who need to short-term rent to pay their mortgage from the regulations. But to say that this has no impact on year-round housing is a falsehood, because the person who used to be able to buy in a certain neighborhood at 2 million can't get that house anymore. And they're going to Essex Road and Bartlett Road and Larrabee Lane and Anna Drive and all of the neighborhoods that have been strictly year-round neighborhoods since I've been coming to Nantucket. And these are becoming full-time short-term rentals and displacing year-rounders. And that is my very, very deep concern. And I think we need to address this. And my fear is that if we codify everything, that the opportunity that the Styler decision brings our community to come to some reasonable compromise on how to do this right for our long-term viability as a community will be lost. Thanks, that's it.
Thank you, Brooke. John, I have a question for you before we go to anybody else. I really want to hear from the public, but it seems odd. Matt and I can't answer anybody. We can't even really ask questions to anybody. So we have to listen. We can't say anything. Is there deliberation happening with the public and other board members? Is this okay? I guess is what I'm checking.
I think it's okay.
Okay, all right.
To allow the public to speak, yes.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure, because but Matt and I can't really say anything to the public or respond to it.
Right.
Okay.
You really can't deliberate amongst yourselves. So that's the issue amongst the two of you.
Okay, we go to Rick Atherton and we'll go to Dave and Leslie. I see your hands up. I think Rick went off really quick. Maybe he'll come back. Dave? Iverson?
Yes, I have a ton of respect for Brooke.
Let's just try to talk through me. Just clarify something or ask a question.
I think we're stuck in a weird catch-22 here. So there's a huge concern, and I'm part of the affordable housing for housing, safe, secure housing for local people, which it is insanely important here. But I think we're stuck in a catch-22 here because there is going to be an effect on the economy, the island economy here, depending on what we do. So I think we need to be careful moving forward. And I'm not saying that Brooke is wrong, but I'm saying that we really need to be careful and move forward here. But we need to do something. We can't just pass this on for another year. We need to make a decision. And I think that it would be smart for the board to let this go on the warrant and really let the true debate begin amongst the people that it's really going to affect. Okay. Instead of us just as board members, trying to think what's best. I think that it's important that the community as a whole is brought into this discussion. And I think that's what's going to be best for this issue in the long run. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Leslie?
Oh, thank you. I just want to point out, we keep veering into the zoning discussion, but this particular article is about short-term rental regulations. It's a general bylaw. It develops a registration process so that we can locally track the short-term rentals. There's an enforcement process. There's a town department that's identified so that if there is an issue, you can go to them, they can investigate it. Article 39 does nothing except improve what's already happening, and it's completely separate from the zoning. So I'll talk about the zoning part later.
Thank you, Leslie. I don't know, John, stop me if I'm going too far. I think they're connected. So I think everyone's trying to understand how how they are connected or not. And if there is one and not the other, how would that affect things? I think that's, well, a lot of you are trying to figure out. Is that too much, John?
Nope.
Okay, just being really careful. Can we go to Rick Atherton? We'll take a couple more and then give a chance for Matt to ask any more questions, and I think we'll move on.
But Jason, thank you. So I understand what Leslie's saying about disconnecting these, but clearly they are connected. You know, let's not kid ourselves. I want to thank Brooke for making one of the issues entirely clear. And I think that's exactly the reason why the next zoning article should not be on the warrant. If it passes, all those issues are just swept away and we're on our way without any way to stop it. And I think people who let this on the warrant know that full well, and they have to accept personal responsibility for their actions. There's no immediate urgency that I've heard to put it on other than, oh, golly whiz, someone might sue us. Well, they sue the planning board all the time. And town council is more than happy and willing and capable of protecting them when it's appropriate. So I just find that a flimsy argument. I think it's premature. And I think the select board needs to, be concerned and remove that article from the warrant. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Can we go to Tobias? Or Tobias, you had your hand up a second ago? There it is.
Thank you, Chairman Bridges. I was going to comment on the zoning article, supportive of the concept of Article 39. I believe short-term rentals do need to be regulated. I had a question, to Town Council, Mr. Giorgio. I feel as though in watching past board comments from other meetings that there was not support for an outright legalization of short-term rentals across the island, that Article 39 and the subsequent zoning article suggest. And I would strongly encourage the select board and Mr. Giorgio to take another week delay and reach out to the Attorney General and ask if it's appropriate that something go onto the warrant that didn't even get 10 signatures. This supersedes even the most minimal requirements for going on to the warrant and without proper deliberation. And I feel very strongly that it is not appropriate that anything should be put before such a well-respected body of town meeting that has not been thoroughly vetted and has not been debated by the board. Thank you.
John, did you want to comment on anything?
Only to say, Mr. Chairman, that in the past, my understanding is the select board has acceded to the recommendations of the planning board by placing articles on the warrant. And the planning board really has the right to place articles before town meeting. And you have a vote of the planning board to do just that with the zoning article. So I respectfully disagree with Mr. Glidden that it would be inappropriate for the board to vote to adopt the warrant that included the short-term rental articles, especially the zoning article. There is going to be a myriad of opportunities to have the kind of debate that people are talking about. You're going to have a planning board hearing. You're going to have a finance committee hearing. Hopefully the select board will have the opportunity to take a definitive stand on this article and other articles if you can manage to get yourself a quorum. And if you do, you can make your recommendations and you can put comments in the warrant however you think is appropriate. But the first step here is getting it on the warrant so that the planning board can proceed with the public hearing process. That's the way it's supposed to work. And I don't think anybody should be afraid of allowing a full-throated discussion and debate at the planning board, at town meeting, in front of the finance committee. That's how good laws are made, by vigorous debate.
Thank you, John. Matt?
Question for John. So is this, and I'm sticking on Article 39.
Yeah.
Does this regulation establish the short-term rentals as a legal use? You know, because right now it's arguably, you know, they're arguably pre-existing, et cetera. But does
No.
this strengthen that or no?
It does not, in my opinion, Matt. It's a whole separate regulatory scheme that allows the Board of Health to enact regulations to address the potential nuisance impacts of short-term rentals. Zoning is a totally separate matter.
Another question, follow-up. Where do we address the the impact on the loss of year-round housing? Where's the appropriate place to do that? Is that when we have a full board we can do it? Or is that the responsibility of the planning board? Who is responsible to look into those impacts and, you know, for this?
Matt, that's ultimately the decision of town meeting. Town meeting is going to make this decision. And I'm sure based upon last year, there will be a vigorous discussion about the impact of any zoning bylaw or general bylaw on year-round housing. And if people agree that this is opening the door, then they're going to vote no. But that's where, in my opinion, this debate belongs.
Anything else, Matt? I think we'll probably have more discussions on the zoning article too.
Yep.
Okay, Libby, I think we can move on. Thank you, everyone.
So the next couple of articles relate to 39 with respect to where the revenue generated from short-term rental registrations would go. They would go into a revolving account, and then we would need to set a spending limit for it, and those revenues would be used to administer the program. And then the next, I'm not sure how many, 20-ish or more articles are zoning. And if you have questions about those, I think Leslie is available. I'll go back a second. What was that little note? Oh, yeah, sorry. I don't think much changed except for minor edits here and there, Leslie, from last week. Go back up a tab. All right, zoning's over now, and now we're getting into general bylaws. So we've got, you already know all these. There's the dog park one. Citizens, and I guess these are ours actually. Cemetery. Nothing's changed in any of this from last week. Gone over all of these multiple times. Citizen. Next few, I think, are citizen. Yep. A couple sewer districts, including citizen ones. Okay, to stop here. Article 76, the home rule petition for the community housing bank. This has been modified, I believe, to mirror what is before the state legislature right now, and Vicky and Tucker have been working on it. Is that correct? Vicky or Tucker?
Yes, it's been revised so that the original version that had been in the warrant for your consideration, it now mirrors what is pending. And so we've also added an additional clause at the end, section 11, which if there is an affirmative, a favorable vote on this article, that this would allow the town meeting vote to also have the town opt into the legislation that is before the general court. And that provision would be provided that the provisions in this particular article are consistent with the provisions of the act that gets adopted by both houses of the general court.
Thank you, Vicky. And I think we talked about that over the last couple of meetings. Oh, Matt?
Yeah, I didn't see that. Is that wording in there, or is that has to still be inserted?
That is in section 11 now. The
All right,
version
got
that's up before you, it's the very end of section 11.
Yeah, got it. Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Thank you, Vicky.
Libby, we had Tucker had his hand up, maybe on that article.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And yeah, and I think Vicky's really captured it here. I mean, the two basic differences to the home rule petition we have before the legislature right now, which are actually there's a hearing on or for on Friday, are increasing the AMI limit from 175 to 240, and then this preemptive opt-in in section 11 that Attorney Marsh was just describing. Should the state enabling, one of the state enabling legislation bills pass. At this point, there are a number of home rule petitions similar to ours, and the wisdom is that it's more likely that state enabling legislation would pass at this juncture versus any particular home rule petition. So that's the intent of section 11. Thank you.
Okay. Everybody good with that? All right. So keeping going. This is, you've seen this before. Keep going. Yep. Seen all of this. Okay, this I just wanted to point out has been in, it's a home rule petition that involves transactions of property between the land bank and the town. And Representative Fernandez let me know last week, we don't need to include this because he expected it to pass imminently. And I think I may have even seen email today that it did pass.
It passed in the House. It still needs to get approved at the Senate and then signed into law by the governor.
Okay, thank you. So I think the prevailing thinking is that that those things won't be an issue. So we won't need to include this. So keep going.
So the new 79, can we go back to that? That's a citizen article. It's the
Fertilizer.
fertilizer.
Yep.
That may, we don't have to sort of do it tonight, because we'll have a chance to comment later. It may not be necessary. I think that the fact this was put in has energized the community, and conversations have come around about NPDC and being able to do it through UMass Extension and sort of get to this another way, which is not a home rule, but that has been a positive that's happened. So,
Mr. Chair, since I met with the planning board and the planning commission the other night, I have done some further research, and I've actually made a call to the Attorney General's office to seek their input. Margaret Hurley, who drafted that Falmouth decision. And there is a question in my mind as to whether that option, the Planning Commission option, is still viable. So I would recommend that you keep Article 79 in the warrant And if need be, we could craft a home rule petition under this in the motion that would extend the deadline for the planning commission to act. That's essentially the question. I will know more early next week, I think, whether it's necessary, but it's important to have a placeholder just in case.
But John, we wouldn't take out 79 anyway, because it's a citizen article.
Oh, you're right, but we may have a very different motion.
Well,
For the finance committee could write a different motion.
yes, right, but it wouldn't be out of scope or anything like that.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, fine. So there may be another approach, is what you're saying, you guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, keep going. These are all citizen. And then we just have real estate. I don't think there were any major changes to real estate other than corrections here and there of map numbers and proper
That's
standardized
correct.
recording. Thank you, Ken. So nothing really changed here. Yeah, some of them have companion home rule petitions as well. I don't think there's anything really to point out in any of these. You've reviewed them all before. Oh, yeah, never mind. Sorry. And okay, keep going. So we have 107 articles. And then we get into the election warrant. And these are all of the companion ballot questions for the standalone debt exclusions that we talked about earlier. Keep going. So we will have to, Vicky, change number 7 as we change it up above, as discussed earlier. All of this you saw last week. And that is it.
Libby, I think there want to be some discussion or questions on the zoning bylaw for short-term rentals.
Sure.
Earlier, I said there'd be a chance to talk about that and ask questions, even though they're related, and we probably got through, a lot of the concerns. I just want to give an opportunity for Matt, planning board, Leslie, and the public to ask any questions. Matt?
Here's a scope question. So let's say this goes to town meeting as is, and somebody wants to, I'll use the example of not allow them in the country districts. Would that be considered more restrictive and therefore not allowed? I guess I'm asking, are we going with the least restrictive and no changes will be allowed with it?
Is that for John or
Yes,
Leslie?
please. Yeah, for John or Leslie, either one. What, the scope of the article, are we writing it in such a way that it can't be amended because it'll be more restrictive?
John or Leslie, whoever.
I think John's frozen, but I was going to let him answer that.
John, you're muted.
Sorry about that. And I also have to plug in my laptop because I'm about to lose power here. So give me half a second. I think that would be a question that we would want to address with the moderator, who decides all questions of scope. It's now, well, it is currently in the bylaw. They are allowed in residential dwellings with the exceptions of the one listed. Matt, you're suggesting that if you made it a prohibited use in certain zoning districts, would that be within the scope?
Well, the question I'm asking, John, right now, we're allowing it everywhere. So let's just say that somebody wants to make an amendment on town meeting floor and say, I don't want to allow it through zoning everywhere. I only want to allow it in these places. Would that be considered more restrictive? And therefore, we couldn't vote on that.
I'd have to, I'm not prepared to answer that tonight. Matt, I think you could make an argument that it is generally within the scope of what's being proposed in the zoning article. The voters are warned that there will be a zoning amendment regulating the short-term rental use. And I think you could make a plausible argument that that would be within the scope, but that would be ultimately the moderator's call, depending on what the actual amendment looks like.
Okay. Thank you, John. Looks like you're powered in now.
I am. Thank you very much.
Matt, did you have anything else?
I have, I have things that I'd like to say that I can't say right today, but no, I don't know that I can turn them into, into a question. I have concerns. I have concerns about the process. And it's sort of, anyway, but I can't talk about those. So
Well, I think you've done a good job of using scenarios to ask a question, right? And that fits into, not that we have time to do 100 different scenarios, but that, I think that's been helpful. Well, if there's nothing else, that's everything you had, Libby. So we're at the point where there's lots of different options to make a motion. The only change that I'm aware of is Article 20 to add that extra language. So would we put that in the motion?
I think so.
Okay. Any other discussion on motion to adopt? Or does anyone want to make a motion and we could do a second for discussion? Don?
So shall we make a motion to adopt with the changes noted to Article 20?
If that's your motion. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on anything? Okay. By roll call, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. That passes 4-0. Is there any housekeeping or anything, Libby, for this, for John?
Just next steps. Nobody bother Erica tomorrow or try to get in touch with her because she is going to be turning this into what will eventually in the next week or so go to the paper to be published. And then FinCom is already starting to review citizen articles. They'll start reviewing all of the articles over the next month. And beginning of March, first 2 weeks of March, FinCom will finalize, Planning Board will finalize, and you all will have a joint meeting on March 16th, I think it is. March 14th, it's a Monday. You have a joint Select Board, Planning Board, FinCom meeting to review all motions. And then you all have the opportunity to make Select Board comments that week, that Wednesday, the 16th, finish them up on the 23rd. And then we get it all together to send it to the printer and get it mailed out to the voters for town meeting to start on May 2nd.
So that was March, right? You said.
For that joint meeting?
Well, for our comments.
Yes, March 16th and 23rd.
Okay. All right. Any committee reports? Any comments from the board? Melissa, you gave yours at the beginning. That was smart. Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Matthew,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, John. Thanks, Libby.